Remember, we divided the sea for you and saved you. Verse 51, and remember, we appointed 40 nights for Musa alayhi salam. Verse 52, we did forgive you. Verse 53, 54, 55, 58, 60, and 61 start with remember. Verse 61, they went on rejecting the signs of Allah and slaying His messengers without just cause. This because they rebelled and went on transgressing. They were not obedient. Verse 63, and remember. Verse 64, and ye turned back. Verse 67, and remember. Verse 72, remember. Verse 74, thenceforth were your hearts hardened. They became like a rock, and even worse in hardness. We as Muslims, when our hearts are purified, we are compassionate people. We are loving people, empathic people. We are moved by the plight of people's lives. The same way that our beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was moved by the plight in people's lives and responded to their needs. He created mu'aykah, He created brotherhood, because He recognized the pain of those people who gave up everything to come to Islam. Yes, Brother Warren?
Was this surah revealed in Mecca or Medina?
I do not remember. Forgive me. If you remind me, I'll go back and look.
And I'm sure it was in different...
Yeah, I'm thinking it was both.
I don't want to say what I don't know. I'm just forgetting that, brother. But this is what happens if we aren't obedient, folks. The more we disobey Allah, when we know, the harder our hearts get. And a disease gets in our heart. And we have dis-ease. We are anxious and uncomfortable. But when we are obedient, then we're very relaxed. Verse 83, 84, and 93 begin with, and remember. Isn't it interesting, because many ahadith, plural of hadith for my newer students, tell us that the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to multiply his memory of death. It said that we should keep our lips, our tongues wet, moist with the remembrance of Allah. Verse 122 calls the children of Israel to remember the favors that Allah had bestowed upon them. In verse 123 tells them to guard themselves against the day when no soul shall avail another. Verse 124, 125, 126, 127, and 152 are all reminders. In 30 verses, and remember. And I believe in 152 the word remember is there twice. Allahu Alam. I'm pretty sure I'm right about that. Surah Baqarah warns deniers of truth and establishes the penalty for such. In that context, mention is made of those who accepted it and those who rejected it. And some people accept it, it goes into their head, they stand in front of a group of people, they do their shahada, they say, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan abdur Rasulullah. But if they do not implement it, it does not move into their heart. We know that iman, that faith fluctuates. It's like laundry. In the morning it may be very clean, and by the evening it may be very dirty. We know that the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said that a Muslim is one in whom you are safe from his tongue and hands. But a mu'min, a believer, is one in whom you can entrust your life and property. You can go to that mu'min and tell him anything that ever happened to you or her, and know that it's never going to be, never will they say anything. Because you can trust them with your life. That requires iman. It requires that Islam moves from the head into the heart, about 18 inches down. I believe that's the average length from the brain to the heart, about 18 inches. You have a question, Mom?
No, I measure.
You're measuring, okay.
From the heart. I measure 2 of these.
Recounted Allah's blessings and favors of the progeny of Ibrahim right through verse 124. How many times do we stop to count the blessings of Allah, the na'am of Allah?
Shukr.
Because we know that the Quran says that we could not encompass it. If we spent the rest of our life, we could never ever count the blessings of Allah. So perhaps we need to be reminded so that we maintain our attitude of shukr, an attitude of gratitude, an attitude that we are always thankful for what Allah brings our way. The chapter then picks up the Qibla, which continued until verse 158. This is followed by the affirmation of Allah's oneness and the reputation of the principles and subsidiaries of shirk, the act of associating others with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The verses that follow educate Muslims on the principles and the subsidiaries of their religion. This continues through the end of the surah by presenting and explaining the concepts of piety and righteousness, bir, an umbrella word in Arabic used for what is good that contributes toward acts of righteousness and obedience, inward and outward. As a matter of fact, if we look in the Islamic paradigm, in the Islamic context, knowledge that is not implemented is actually a curse to you. That which you know and you do not implement will become a punishment for you. This is why often in convert care, when people come and ask me a question, I ask them, are you sure you want to know? Because if you don't know, you're not responsible. But once you know, you're responsible. And they say, maybe I don't want to know today. Basic principles, such as belief in the book. If I believe in something, what do I do? If I really believe in something,
I implement it.
I implement it. That is the indicator of how much we actually believe. Sometimes if we don't really believe something, we talk a lot about it, trying to convince ourselves, but you can tell that the person talks about it so much that, are you talking or are you believing? It's different. Spending of wealth in charity, fulfilling promises, and patience in distress have been stressed in these verses to come. Incidentally, these include the basic principles behind all injunctions of Holy Quran. The articles of faith, the deeds in accordance with them, and the morals and the essence of all religious injunctions. These are basic and fundamental. From this point onward, we find details of this comprehensive attribute of bir, piety and righteousness. Verse 177 contains many great wisdoms, encompassing rulings and correct beliefs. We call that aqidah. Sometimes we will say someone's aqidah is weak, meaning they don't have a correct understanding of what Allah has clearly prescribed and what He has prohibited. They're a little confused, maybe. Allah first commanded the believers to face Bayt al-Maqdis and then to face the Kaaba during the prayer. This change was difficult for some of the people of the book and even for some Muslims. I could do a simple experiment right now, but I don't want to create any fitna, so I won't do it. I'll just tell you about it. But if I were to say to most of you, listen, I'd like you to get up and I want you to go sit over there. Why? I don't want to sit over there. I like my seat. This is where I always sit. The human condition is that we are very resistant to change, aren't we? Look at the mercy of Allah in that He gave the Muslims who had a huge problem with alcohol when Prophet Muhammad ﷺ came on the scene, that He gave them 8 years before He prohibited it. Somebody embraces Islam and we expect them to know everything and implement it tomorrow. We have a shahada today, tomorrow then they should just fall in line. That's not how humans work. This change was difficult for some people, some of the people of the book, and even for some Muslims. Then Allah sent revelation which clarified the wisdom behind this command, that is, obedience to Allah. Adhering to His commands, facing wherever He commands facing, and implementing whatever He legislates. This is the objective. We should pray for strength to be obedient. Because often I hear people say, I know the Quran says this, But I ain't ready for that yet. Then we need to pray for Iman. That our Iman, our faith will be strengthened to the point that we will be made ready, that our state will be one of readiness and humility, that we are ready to obey whatever our Creator, whatever our Sustainer has asked of us. This is bir, taqwa, and complete faith. Facing the east or the west does not necessitate righteousness or obedience unless it is legislated by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is why Allah said in phrase 1 and 2 of verse 177, it is not bir that you turn your faces toward east or west in prayer, but bir is the one who believes in Allah and the last day. Believes. Not gives lip service to it, but believes in it, so much so that they obey it. That it is their modus operandi, the mode that they operate from, the very essence of their being, is I believe in Allah, and I believe what He said, and therefore I am obedient to what He said. Similarly, Allah said about the sacrifices in Surah 22 and 37, it is neither their meat nor their blood that reaches Allah, but it is the piety from you that reaches Him. When we go out and we slaughter on Eid, is it the very act of the slaughtering that reaches Allah, or the heart behind what we've done? It is not the ritual in and of themselves that are the essence of righteousness, but it is the obedience to Allah. That desire to please Allah. Oh Allah, I want to please you. I'm not doing this to show off. I'm not doing this so that everybody in the community will know that I personally went out and slaughtered my little lamb. But I want to please you. You are my Lord and my Sustainer. And I want to please you. Righteousness requires implementation of Allah's command, and that is faith, that is Iman. Similarly, it was reported from Al-Hasan and Al-Rabi bin Anas, Al-Thawri recited, but bir is the one who believes in Allah, and said that what follows are the types of bir. He has said the truth. Certainly, those who acquire the qualities mentioned in the ayah will have indeed embraced all aspects of Islam and implemented all types of righteousness, believing in Allah, and He is the only God worthy of worship, and believing in the angels and the emissaries between Allah and His messenger.
And practice.
And let's talk about the opposite of that. In the authentic hadith, one hadith says 3 signs of a hypocrite and one says 4. So if you want to really understand what piety is, look at what the opposite of piety is. Abdullah ibn Amr radiallahu anh says that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said 4 traits. Whoever possesses them is a hypocrite, and whoever possesses some of them has an element of hypocrisy until he leaves it or she leaves it. The one who when he speaks he lies. When he promises, he breaks his promise. When he disputes, he transgresses. And when he makes an agreement, he violates it. And this is found in both Muslim and Bukhari. Now, yes, brother.
What does it mean when he disputes and he transgresses?
In other words, if I have a dispute with you, I transgress the limits. I use my power, maybe because I'm older and got gray hair, then I'll throw out some stuff. I might even lie. I might exaggerate. But when I dispute with you, I won't do it in a just manner.
So it's like taking revenge and overtaking it?
Well, it's exploiting a person's lack of knowledge, or it could simply be being arrogant and exerting your so-called power over someone. For example, let's say that somebody has a degree in Islamic studies and someone doesn't, and so they'll say, well, I have a degree in Islamic studies. What do you have? That sort of idea.
Using your authority?
Usurping your authority, yes. Because in Islam, authority comes with responsibility. The authoritative people in Islam are made shepherds. And that's more about caregiving instead of having a chip on your shoulder. There's a humility, so much so that the authentic hadith says that if you desire to be an imam, you are disqualified. Very powerful. Many injunctions in unison with suitable time and place have been taken up in the verses addressing righteousness. Some of these are about equal retaliation. So we know that the Quran says an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth, but somebody finish it for me. Thank you. Forgiveness is better. One of our HIF students, mashallah. It also says that if your enemy seeks peace, then you seek peace, because Allah does not like the transgressor. Don't exceed the limits, Allah says. So I always tell this in colleges, it's sort of one of my standard jokes, that if I pull into the parking lot and whip into your parking space and take it, I saw your signal on, but I acted like I didn't, and I took your parking space, and you got out and you gave me a black eye. Do I have a right to give you a black eye?
Yes.
Technically speaking, yes. Can I give you two?
No.
No, because that's transgressing the limit. But best practice would be, I'd say, forgive the person. But I'm the one that took the parking space. So after the brother gave me the black eye, if he says, oh man, peace out, I forgot to take my Prozac this morning, then what have I got to do? If he seeks forgiveness, I've got to forgive him. That's obedience. Some of these are about equal retaliation, will, fasting, jihad, hajj, spending, menstruation, oaths, divorce, marriage, post-divorce waiting period, the iddah, for women, dowry, spending in the way of Allah, rules of trade, and having witnesses to contracts. When people say to you, oh brother, we brothers in Islam, mashallah, let's just shake hands on this. They know where the Quran says, bring a witness, bring a scribe. I don't do anything without that. I've got dear friends that have borrowed money from me, and when they borrowed money, I go to the masjid and I get two witnesses, because that's what the Quran told me to do. It's not about whether I think they're going to pay me back or not. It's about me being obedient to Allah. It's about me teaching them the right way to do something. The books are the divinely revealed books from Allah to the prophets, which were finalized by the most honorable book, the Holy Quran, the final revelation, the final edition. And of course, when I think about the Quran, I often think about my days in Manhattan. In the morning, when you would go to get in the subway, they'd be selling you the morning edition of the New York Times. When you got off work that evening, they'd be trying to sell you the evening edition. Well, which one would you rather have in the evening, the morning edition or the evening edition? Yeah, and that's the thing. When you get the Quran, you've got the final edition. The Quran supersedes all previous books. It mentions all types of righteousness and the way to happiness in this life and the hereafter. The Quran abrogates all previous books and testifies to all Allah's prophets, from the first prophet Adam a.s. to the final prophet Muhammad ﷺ. May Allah's peace and blessings be upon all the prophets. In phrase 7 of this verse, 177, and gives his wealth in spite of love for it, refers to those who give money while desiring it and loving it. You see, folks, let me ask you a question. Is it really sacrifice if you're giving something you really don't care about? Is that sacrifice? Well, you know, I've got 4 cars in my driveway. Just take one of them.
Take your favorite one.
Yeah. But is that sacrifice if I don't really care? But if I really love it, this is my favorite car. You know, maybe this is my Maserati.
That's right. BMW.
But take the Maserati. Leave me with the Honda Fit. So phrase 7 of Surah 2 and verse 177, and gives his wealth in spite of love for it, refers to those who give money away while desiring it and loving it. And there's a whole science in Islam called infaq fil mal, giving for the sake of Allah. And we did a class on this that was like 6 months long one time. Way back some years, I did this long class about infaq fil mal. There's so much knowledge about this. It's unbelievable. We know that one of the prime examples is that Abu Bakr radiallahu anh gave everything he had to Islam. We know that Umar radiallahu anh gave half of everything he had to Islam. This is real giving. It is recorded in the Sahihan that Abu Hurairah narrated that the Prophet ﷺ said, the best charity is when you give it away while still healthy and thrifty, hoping to get rich and fearing poverty. There's that al-mizan, there's that balance, in that I still hope I can make money, but I'm still going to give money away, and I might be poor, but I'm going to give it for the sake of Allah. I'm going to make that sacrifice. In Surah 76, verse 8 and 9, and they give food in spite of their love for it to the miskin, the poor, the orphan, and the captive, saying, we feed you seeking Allah's face, Allah's countenance only. We wish for no reward nor thanks from you. Now, I want to say something because a lot of people take this verse and say, you don't have to say thank you to me. But the authentic hadith says, why do we, if we don't thank the people of the earth, then we will not be thanked by Allah. We will not thank Allah. So gratitude is a part of the adabs of a Muslim. We are supposed to thank people when they do stuff for us. This is good adab, good manners. But we shouldn't expect it. We shouldn't do it for them. Well, I can't believe it. I did so and so and they didn't even say thank you. Is that what we did it for? So that somebody, for 2 words, thank you, or 1 word, shukran? Or did we do it because we love Allah and we want the blessing, the thawab, the merit from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? In Surah 3 and verse 92, by no means shall you attain bir unless you spend of what you love. So here's the key. You want righteousness? You want piety? You've got to spend from what you love. It's a key. I didn't write this. It came from Surah 3 verse 92. I did type it, but I mean, I didn't create this meaning.
Should I pass the box around one more time?
It'll be by the door. If anybody wants to reconsider this verse, the box is by the door. Alhamdulillah. Surah 59 and verse 9, and give them preference over themselves, even though they were in need of that, refers to a higher category and status, or maqam, as we say, station in piety. As the people mentioned here give away what they need, while those mentioned in the previous verses give away what they covet, but not necessarily need. Huge difference. In phrase 8 of 2:177, the kinfolks refers to man's relatives who have more rights than anyone else to one's charity, as the hadith supports. Sadaqah, charity given to the poor is a charity, while the sadaqah given to the relatives is both sadaqah and sila, which is nurturing relationships. For they are the most deserving of you and your kindness and charity. And this is something that's very hard. Sometimes we have family members that really give us a rough time, particularly after we do our shahada. And we are called to be kind to them. If we are only kind to our relatives that are kind to us, the hadith, the authentic hadith says that is not kindness. And I want to tell you that what I'm speaking to, I have experienced it at great length. When I became Muslim, I was disowned by one of my parents. And it was very painful. I was told that I could not visit the home place unless I changed my name and my religion. And I know that many of you are struggling with that. Be kind. Love yourself, guard your religion, but maintain family relationships. It's part of piety. It's very humbling. Believe me, to love people who do not love you, or who want to control you and take you out of monotheism, take you out of the oneness of God. It's a trial. It's a test for you. But it's easy to love people that are good to you. It's not easy to love people who are not good to you. That is called sacrifice. Allah has commanded kindness to the relatives in many places in the Quran. In phrase 9 of Surah 2, verse 177, to the orphans. The orphans are children who have no one to look after them, having lost their fathers while they are still young, weak, and unable to find their own sustenance, since they have not reached the age of work and adolescence. Abdul Razak reported that Ali said that the Prophet ﷺ said regarding phrase 10 of Surah 2, verse 177, that is, and to all masakin, the miskin are the persons who do not have enough food, clothing, or he has no dwelling. And we are enjoined to give those people what we would give ourselves. What happens most of the time is that we give them what we don't want anymore. We give them the jackets with the holes in it and we go buy ourselves a new one. This is not best practice. This is not the practice of sacrifice. This is not coming from that station of piety and righteousness. It's a good practice, but not the best practice. So the miskin should be granted the provisions to sustain him enough so that he can acquire his needs. In the authentic hadith, it is recorded that Abu Hurairah said that Allah's Messenger ﷺ said, the miskin is not the person who roams around and whose need is met by 1 or 2 dates or 1 or 2 bites. Rather, the miskin is he who does not have what is sufficient, and to whom the people do not pay attention and thus do not give him from the charity. It is very sad, but often I'm in the automobile with a Muslim and we drive up to a homeless person. They say, drug addict, ought to get a job. And they just castigate this person not knowing anything about him or her. But then it's beautiful when you see that Muslim reach into their pocket and give that person something. Totally for the sake of Allah. Now we could get into some philosophies about it's better to give them a fishing pole than it is to give them fish every week. But the point here is that that poor person, where is our heart? Where is our head? What is our condition when we see them? Do we think we're superior to them? That we're better than them? And they don't deserve what Allah has given us? Yes, brother?
So the miskin could be Muslim and non-Muslim?
Absolutely, yes. Phrase 11 of this verse, 177, to my knowledge, Islam was the first religion, only religion that actually addressed specifically the wayfarer. And numerous times since we started this class in 2007, somebody would come up in the parking lot and say, well, I brought my family down here on vacation, we went to Miami and we've run out of gas and we're trying to get back to New York. And we would do a little offering or find some people that had some money that day and give them the gas to go back to New York. So it says, and to the wayfarer is the needy traveler who runs out of money and should thus be granted whatever amount that helps him to go back to his land. Such is the case with whoever intends to go on a permissible journey. He is given what he needs for his journey and back. And this it comes, by the way, from Ibn Kathir as the tafsir of this verse. There are some people that when they see these people coming, they start running, or they quickly get in their car and leave.
Well, because a lot of them do scam, and a lot of them are, you know.
But it doesn't take away the blessing.
But you're in blessing, you
No.
still get a blessing.
No question, sister. We have the scam artists. We have them that start at one of the 30 masajid in Orlando, and they go to every 30 masjid telling the same story. And if we were really prudent, we would have a system whereby before we give the money, we would have a social security number. Unless the person doesn't have that, we have that situation too. And I'm speaking as a social worker who's worked in this field. As many of you know, I have a master's in social work. But if we are doing it to please Allah, it is a creation of Allah. That person was created by Allah. They are human. Is my heart in the right place? I can't determine where their heart is. They might be taking advantage of me. But if I don't know that and I give infaq fil mal for the sake of Allah, then I can only get rewarded. Because I'm doing it out of piety, piyyah, righteousness, obedience to Allah. If I know that this is the case, then it's a different story. Phrase 12. And to those who ask refers to those who beg people and are thus given a part of the zakah and general charity. It is very sad to me, but in Surah Tawbah, may Allah forgive me, I believe it's verse 60, there are 8 categories of people that are supposed to give zakah. One of them is the da'i. But there are 8 categories. If you go to churches, they have special fundraisers for missions, for all different purposes. I ask you to go and talk to boards of various masajid, and ask them, how much do you give to each group? When we collect zakat every year, we divide it between those 8 groups, and we try to find a way to give it to those 8 equally. Phrase 13, and to set servants free. Some people will say, well, we don't have that anymore. Oh, yes, we do. It's called human trafficking. I told you this morning the story of a 10-year-old Muslim boy who was sold for $10,000. Do you know who freed that boy? The United States government. He's now in witness protection. But he was freed from the Taliban by the United States government. It wasn't the Muslims. Because some Muslims will tell you that even if you have someone in your community, you shouldn't tell it. Astaghfirullah. These are the servants who seek to free themselves but cannot find enough money to buy their freedom. Several of these categories and types are addressed under the tafsir of the ayat on sadaqah in Surah Baqarah, chapter 9 in the Holy Quran. Chapter 9 is Tawbah. Is Tawbah also Bara'ah? There's an error there, I apologize. In phrase 14 of Tube 177, performs a salah. Iqama as-salat means those who pray on time and give the prayer its right due. The bowing, prostration, and the necessary attention and humbleness required by Allah. Phrase 15, and gives the zakat, means the required charity due on one's money. The 2.5% of surplus that's been held on to more than a year. You know, it's amazing because the Holy Quran actually commands us to go and collect this. I really wonder what would happen if we had a committee and we went to every single member of this community and said, I'm here to collect. Now, we don't have any problem when the IRS comes to collect, and when they send us a letter that if we don't pay, we're going to pay penalties and interest, and we pay. But when Allah says, we look for every loophole. I tell you, every year I teach on this, and every year somebody will call me afterwards and they treat it like it's the IRS. Brother, you got a chance to give for the sake of Allah and to get the blessing, the thawab, the merits from Allah, and you're looking for a way out. Phrase 16 of this verse, and who fulfill their covenant when they make it, is similar to Surah 13 verse 20. Those who fulfill the covenant of Allah and break not the mithaq, the bond, the treaty and covenant. So I'm going to finish this slide and stop today because the prayer at the masjid is 1 o'clock and I certainly want everyone to have time to make their wudu and prepare for the prayer, inshallah. The opposite of this characteristic is hypocrisy, as found in a hadith. The signs of the hypocrisy are 3 or 4. If he speaks, he lies. If he promises, he breaks his promise. And if he is entrusted, he breaches the trust. If he disputes, he is lewd. And then finally, phrase 17, and who are patient in extreme poverty and ailment. No matter what they experience, they are patient. They say, Shukran Allah, Alhamdulillah. This is all from Allah. It means during the time of meekness and ailment. So alhamdulillah, I pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will help us to be obedient to all of these aspects in this verse, to be cognizant of these aspects, to implement these aspects in our lives. I love you all for the sake of Allah. Inshallah, when you come next week, you'll bring a person with you. So each one, if you bring one, more people could get more knowledge and we'll have a larger family, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.